All right, so here I want to talk about some techniques we can use when we're making choices to take some of the anxiety and maybe some of kind of the meta weird concerns or thoughts I know I often have around choice. Difficulty deciding between options, difficulty sometimes keeping in mind what the options are, and then sometimes kind of slipping in there this deep kind of existential question of, well, how am I choosing? When is it right to choose? How do I know whether I'm making the right choice? Do I have free will or choice at all those things, which I think those discussions have their time and place, but we're in the moment, especially feeling like something's time sensitive and we want to make choices. That stuff isn't particularly helpful. It certainly doesn't focus us on what's in front of us. So I'm going to talk here just about a few techniques that I've played with that I've found are useful and helpful, take some of the anxiety out of it, and I think help me make better choices. So the first one is kind of riffing off of the Karate Kid a little bit. Mr. Miyagi teaches Daniel how to block by saying wax on, wax off, right? Right hand moves in a motion, and then left hand moves in a mirror motion, right? Wax on, wax off. And with choice, I think we can do that same thing. And the thought I have for this is choose and allow. Choose and allow. Right? Choose and allow. And essentially the way that works is we're facing a choice and we can sense almost like an inner dissent to what we're doing, or inner dissonance or disturbance about it. Oh, are we sure? We're not sure what to do. And this is a point where we're like, okay, look, I want to choose. I'm deciding to make a choice. I don't want to debate this anymore. But I also don't want to make this choice in a way that's bitter or the way that's opposed to other energy inside myself. So how do I go forward? How do I make a choice, but do it with a vibe that works for me? And I think this choose and allow helps create that balance, because we acknowledge, hey, look, I'm making a choice. I had options. I'm taking ownership of my choice. And then I'm going to allow, right, if there's still voices inside of me or energy inside of me that's questioning what I'm doing, upset with what I'm doing, I'm going to allow that, right? And I'm not going to allow that to stop me from making my choice, which I want to do. But then I'm not going to sit here after making my choice. I didn't feel like I need to defend myself, or I need to hide or deny the inner, questions of what's going on, whether that be internal stuff or maybe even the objections of other people to my choice. So I choose and then I allow whatever the reactions to my choice are, right? I choose and I allow. And notice how this is flexible, right? It's not like we need to choose and then stick to our guns no matter what. We allow, and when we're allowing, if we really do hear something that reaches our heart and we go, wow, okay, I want to change my choice or I want to modify my choice, we can then choose and allow again. All right, so that's the first technique, again, kind of a riff of wax on, wax off. The second one is a little bit of a word play. It's chew and sing, chew, sing. And so this is the idea of, oftentimes we'll have a choice, especially if it's an important one coming up. And the brain, especially if it's between like two options, like if you're trying to pick which college to go to, you're trying to decide where to live, something like that, and you're down to two options or a few options, the brain will just kind of get on this merry-go-round where it like pretends it's picked one option, see how it feels, see how it thinks, and then jump to another one. And especially if that imagination is happening kind of subconsciously, we're kind of drifting off into daydreams about it. It can be really confusing for the heart, because the heart always wants to be present, always wants to be aware. And if it's getting ripped out of the present moment into all these alternative realities, and especially if it's happening on kind of this repeating loop, it can be really disorienting and I think really frustrating for us. And that's why I think we feel a lot of the stress and the anxiety leading up to a decision. It's not merely the uncertainty of how it's going to go. It's also the experience of the heart constantly getting ripped up into all these daydreams and fantasies, sensing the repetitive nature of them and not really sensing that anything's advancing or moving. And so if we instead allow for chew and sing, what we could do is we could say, okay, if I'm going to think about it, I'm going to think about it consciously, right? I'm going to chew and I'm going to notice that I'm chewing. Right? I'm not going to be chewing, kind of watching TV, right? Chewing, looking off, right? I'm going to be attending to the jawing motion of my brain as it chews these different options, right? And we want to acknowledge that the brain doing this can be valuable. It can help us spot issues or contingencies we hadn't thought about, let us consider factors, right, that we hadn't been thinking about before. So this chewing is not in any way a waste of time. Quite the contrary, it's helpful for us to make the decision. But the key point is that we're chewing, you could say, with our mouths closed, right, chewing conscientiously, not just kind of chewing wildly or idly. And if we notice our brains doing that, we can just say, okay, chew. We're going to chew, right? We're going to find a good time to chew over this decision. And then the sing part is we don't force the brain to make the decision for us in advance, right? We let the brain do what it's going to do, which is chew, right? The heart is the one that's ultimately going to make the choice, right? The heart's going to sing its choice out through our conduct, right? Which paper we sign, right? If it's colleges, which one we send our check to for the deposit, which one we don't respond to. That's going to be a decision we make from the heart. After the brain has done its chewing, then the heart gets to sing. And if we know that structure in advance, right, and we're doing this consciously, and we're letting the heart know, hey, we're not trying to actually decide right now, we're just trying to kind of go over the factors, knowing that in the moment when it's right, the heart will make its choice, it'll sing. I think it could take some anxiety out of the process, help us avoid some of that looping that can happen, and some of that anxiety that can rise up around it. All right, let me check my board here. Okay, next one is what I call the choice rinser. Right, I have another, I use the same kind of technique sometimes with compulsions. There's a lot of overlap there. But it's essentially, let's say you're sitting there and let's say you're at a restaurant and you're looking at the menu and you've gone over it a couple times now and there's like 3 or 4 things. I'm going to get the tortellini, am I going to get the eggplant parmesan, what am I looking at here? And you can just kind of tell that your brain is kind of rattling back and forth and you're not sure what to do. You could just kind of rinse things out by taking a breath in and counting down from 5, right? Right? And if that feels like it didn't really rinse it out again, you can do another rinse. And doing this just as a way of kind of clearing the field, calming the energy, right? It's kind of like someone who's in a room full of chattering kids being like, all right, let's everyone just quiet down. You don't have to shout or anything like that, but all right, everybody, let's take it down a notch. And you're kind of giving yourself that space and that permission to decide from a quieter place instead of feeling like you need to generate the noise in order to make the wiser decision or to keep all the options in the air. And kind of a connected technique with this, let's say you've rinsed, or even if you haven't, and you're sitting there, you're like, okay, the waiter's not here right now. I've got the menu. I need to decide. But I don't really need to decide now, do I? I need to decide when the waiter's sitting there with the pen and they've taken the order of the person next to me and then they look at me and say, sir, what would you like? And so what I could say in this moment now when the waiter's not yet at the table is I'll choose, right? I'll choose. I know for me when I do that, I feel a little bit of calm come over me because it almost feels like in the moment when I'm trying to generate the choice in advance that I'm trying to force myself to come to a decision. And again, sometimes we do. We look at the menu and we're like, boom, eggplant parmesan. Then you can spend the next 5 minutes drinking your wine and talking to your friends and stuff like that. Sometimes though, we're just not there. We don't know. And so we're going to say, you know what, I'm going to make a decision in the moment, right? I'll choose. And we're kind of in advance taking ownership of the choice. We're kind of in advance giving ourselves permission to not worry about it anymore because whatever we choose is going to be what we chose, right? Is it going to be perfect? Is it the best thing? Who cares, right? I'll have made the choice, right? And then I'll eat the meal that I chose. And so just little things like framing it that way, I think can calm down a lot of that preemptive chatter and then gives us a little more confidence and calmness both now and then in the moment of choice to say, hey, this came, I kind of built up to this. I'm taking ownership of this. Here we go, right? I'm choosing, right? I'm just kind of looking at my board here for some of my notes. Similar idea, right? It's you're sitting there, you see the waiters talking to the person next to you, right? Getting ready to taking their order. You know that you're going to be up in about 5 seconds, right? Or you're about to, go on stage. You've got stage fright. Am I going to take the step or not? And I think what we can do is when the moment comes, right, when that waiter's eyes turn to us with the pen, when our cue comes to go on stage, what we can say either aloud or to ourselves is, I'm choosing. Right? I'm choosing. And then proceed, right? Don't get hung up on it, right? Don't have to get philosophical about what choice means. Don't have to get philosophical about what I means. Don't have to immediately second guess it, right? We can choose and allow. But just framing it as a deliberate action is I'm choosing. Again, just for me, I know it has this way of kind of anchoring me and centering me and having me less get into this world or this notion of parallel tracks, alternative realities. Oh, should I have done this? Oh, should I be doing this? It's not helpful. It distracts me from the present moment, rarely helps me make better choices, usually actually causes me to make worse choices going forward. And so if instead I just kind of own the moment and own the opportunity to act by just saying I'm choosing, even just silently to myself, it really does kind of center me, calm me down, and I usually tend to make better choices going forward, maybe in a sense because I'm owning it. Last one, and this one I think is maybe the most powerful, is transcending the framing altogether. So one thing we notice is, going back to the waiter example at the restaurant, right? We all know from social cues, the waiter sitting there with the pen and the pad, takes the person's next to me order, and then looks at me. The waiter is expecting me, obviously, to state my order or ask a question or do something like that, but basically progress toward the common goal of me getting my meal choice to the waiter so the waiter can write it down on the pad. And one thing we can do is we could say, okay, so I need to make a choice. But do I really? Is that really the only way or the best way even to look at what I'm doing in that moment? In that moment, what I really not only need to do, but what I'm choosing to do, right? Kind of the sub-layer of choice is I've chosen to come to the restaurant, I've chosen to put my butt in the seat, I've chosen to open the menu, and I've chosen to have the waiter now look at the waiter while they're making eye contact. What I really need to do is order, right? I really need to do is state a meal, right? And we could phrase that as a choice, but notice how when you frame it as a choice, it immediately kind of pits the meals against each other. I'm like, ooh, eggplant parmesan, but do I want the tortellini more, right? Oh, should I just skip it and go straight to the tiramisu, right? I'm kind of like holding them in one hand, right? Holding one up to the light, comparing it to the other. And instead of deciding what I really want to order, I'm kind of doing this weird kind of comparison, pros and cons of each one, which I don't know, has a way for me of creating a lot of dissatisfaction, because then after I make the choice, there's kind of inevitably this question of, oh, should I have chosen the other one, etc. And so what if instead of seeing it as a choice, we actually transcend the choice framing altogether? We just say, I'm not going to choose to see this as a choice. I'm just going to state an order, right? And what I order is what's going to come, and what comes is what I'm going to eat. And I don't know, something about that I think is kind of liberating. It could be a little scary, because I think we're oftentimes, I know I am, worried about kind of getting there, and the waiter looks at me and my jaw kind of opens and I'm like, and nothing comes out. But I think that again stems from this anxiety about making the wrong choice, right? We all know how to order food, and we all know what meal is going to satisfy us, right, for the most part. And so it's like, just state a meal that you want to order. Maybe even surprise yourself with it, and then it's going to come, and then you're going to eat it. And because we're not framing it as a choice, when the mind then wants to go, oh, we should have done this, should have done that, it's like, psh, I'm just ordering. I just said what I want, right? And we choose and we allow, right? We choose and we allow. Did I just fall back into the choice framing? I think I did. We just order, and there it is, right? Oh, and then whatever I ordered comes out, and there it is, and I'm eating it. Oh, and there it is. No framing necessary at all, right? No choice necessary at all, right? I just said what I wanted to eat, and now I'm eating it.